one. First, by way of note, excuse Counselor Henderson tonight. He is traveling. I don't think he's joining. He's not online or anything, right? I don't think he was planning on joining us. And then Councilmember Warren will be here, depending on weather, traffic. So it'll probably be a little bit coming from water board meeting. So, item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda. It was asked to be done by 7:30, so keep that in mind. By Councilmember Shields. Staff put us at 9:30. Staff put us at 9:37. That's the over-under. 9:27. 9:27. Hey, I'm on the overside, so. Okay. Nothing on 1.1.
Mrs. Shields is on the underside, in case you're wondering.
Oh. 1.2, any future agenda items?
None that jumps out right now.
Okay. Okay. 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognitions. Depending on who comes tonight, we'll see.
Yeah.
Re-invite.
We have Salt Lake County Meals on Wheels coming on January
Wow.
24th.
We're planning ahead.
I'm having a day with nuts. I'm leaving tomorrow for Mexico, so I'm
You're
going
already
somewhere
mentally
else.
there, yeah.
So yes, January 24th, the Herriman Meals on Wheels volunteers.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on things then.
Have we gotten the RFP?
Okay.
Broadband bids. Okay.
No, it's in my inbox.
Okay. You're leaving.
It's a long flight.
I was gonna say, you think she's
Slacker. Jeez.
Okay. Jump right in. I'm excited about the first one. Item 2.1, Columbus Adult Education Center and Youth Programs Memorandum of Understanding. Wendy, you gonna drive this? And I will introduce, this is Sean, by the way, Marchant. He is the chair of the board for.
So glad you made it.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So we've been approached, I think most of you are aware of the Columbus Adult Education Group. They're currently operating out of Outpost Academy and are looking for a little bit more space that is a little bit closer together and a little bit more convenient, would you say, for their operations and the programs that they're planning to do. They've approached the city to enter into a memorandum of understanding and to utilize the bottom floor, basement floor of Old City Hall, which we're kind of rebranding as the Herriman Community Center. That's just what we're calling it right now. Nothing set in stone. So I've put the MOU in your packet. There are a couple things that we probably need to clear up with the group. One is utilities and how we can split the cost of the facility, heating, cooling, those kinds of things. The other thing is internet needs that they might need. They would probably have to run that in on their own. And I know they're doing some computer type classes, so that's why the internet came to my mind. I don't know if they're online or not. And then what their plans are for cleaning the facility downstairs, keeping it clean and operated. They do run on a large volunteer staff, so I don't know, Sean, if you want to talk about what your programs are, what you're proposing.
No, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. It's actually an all-volunteer organization, so nobody's paid, including the board or the staff. Our main push is we teach English to those who need help learning English. Again, all of our resources are free, and all of the staff and volunteers are not paid, but we have some highly effective English curriculum that we use. In addition to that, we're going to provide other resources like we do in Salt Lake, and we have another facility up in Ogden that we run as well. Some of those programs that we run in other locations are like sewing classes, piano classes, citizenship classes, employment assistance. From the response that we've received here in Herriman already, I think our Herriman location will be the largest. Within a few months. We already have over 100 volunteers signed up to help in the community, and I think that will double or triple here in the coming year. We will have a large youth program here. We have youth programs in our other centers, but nothing like we foresee here in here. So.
There was one concern that Sean brought up about the MOU, as you have it in front of you, and that was about the ability to he specifically mentioned include some phrasing that makes it clear that we are allowed to provide all of our regular programs and resources without having the expectation of getting approval for everything from the city. I'm concerned that someone in the city may not allow us to have prayer or offer religious resources like BYU Pathway college classes if the city is allowing us to use the property. So if there's any concerns about any of that from council, we can try to address it in the MOU. I think we don't specifically call out the ability to have religious classes, we can do that. It's, up for discussion, so you've got the MOU in front of you, I don't know if you have any concerns or questions about it at this point, or if you wanna address Sean's concerns about.
I think balance, I don't think any of us would bring that up, but it's
It's a valid concern though, I mean, it's,
Are the, just maybe more from the staff, is it, we're not talking, like a seminary class or an actual church instruction, but a religious class offered through BYU Pathways, one of their requirements or something like that?
One of the requirements in a BYU pathway class would be that you'd start with prayer, for example. Now, understanding that part of our purpose is bringing the community together. So we reach out to a lot of faiths. In fact, we've already visited a lot of churches who are completely on board with participating with our programs. In our other locations, we have a lot of interfaith activities that happen. So in some of these, for example, I guess what I would say is some of the resources that we can offer are really effective. For example, BYU Pathway is just one of the best avenues for people who don't have a lot of money to get higher education. But there are some of these religious requirements. But we are absolutely open to other churches and other faiths if they have resources they want to offer. We're not afraid of having a faith component. We're not here pushing any church or religion at all, but making it open and available for people of faith. That's something that we do. Down in our Salt Lake location, months back, earlier last year, we had in our building, we had Muslims, Jews, and Christians all together in an event. And the Christians were teaching about Easter, the Muslims were teaching about Ramadan, and the Jews were teaching about the Passover. And we all celebrated together. And we'll do things like that to bring the community together.
I actually think that there's an express endorsement of the free exercise of religion in our buildings. We open our meetings with prayers often, and I don't think there's anything that would be prohibitive or problematic about that at all. I think that there could be a question of whether or not there's a specific denominational class or religious organization teaching out of the building. That might be a potential conflict that could raise some concerns in the community. But as far as the exercise of prayer or discussion of religion, I don't think there's any problem at all.
I would say that as long as the city's not coercing or causing any of that, really, if we just enter into an agreement and somebody's doing that in the building, I'm with the attorney, but that area of law is clear as mud, mostly, because the courts have been all over the board, but I think most of the decisions have really been about coercion and requiring certain things, so I'm sure we can come up with some language that would be comfortable for both sides and just be clear that when they're functioning is that that's their function, that's not the city requiring that.
Yeah, and there's a indemnity clause, so, because they're operating separate and apart from the city. So if there is any issues with religious freedom or whatever, then, and if we got brought into it, then they'd need to indemnify us from that, because we aren't hosting any of those services ourselves.
yeah, I think the language, in simple language, like, as long as they're operating in their form under their normal operation procedures, blah, yada, yada, yada.
and I don't think we need to be brought up to speed.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep, I'm good.
I really don't think that city staff wants to be in the business of approving what their program is.
yeah, no,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So we're gonna agree, they're gonna function, so if they decide to change and offer something just slightly different, I don't wanna be there going, well, does this fit? I mean, I think if all of a sudden they decide to run a private business out of it, that would be different, right? If they're trying to make money out of it, that would be different than, as long as it's so,
like they're following their mission statement,
Yeah.
their vision.
Right.
Yep, which I'm not.
Any other concerns or changes that you would propose with the MOU?
And I will say for public consumption, as they say too, this is, and even Sean said this, they kind of get labeled as a refugee or an immigrant center. This is a community center. This is not just for, it tends to lean that way because of their English focus. But the teen center will be open to anybody that needs, because they'll have ping pong tables, pool tables, so I mean, there's gonna be,
I might take some English classes there.
so there's options. They're flexible about what, we've had a lot of requests for Spanish as a second language out here, because a lot of our residents want to learn. So again, a lot of that programming could happen down the road.
Yeah, in fact, just yesterday we had, and again, these are all just volunteers, but we started a finance and budgeting course and a nutrition course in our Salt Lake facility. We're planning on doing all those things too for the whole.
And somebody last night, we had a couple of people come over. Some guy's he's from Riverton, I think he lives in Gartner's his name, I think. But he just made the comment, he's like, yeah, I just bought a university. And I just have a bunch of extra tables and chairs I'm gonna donate. I've never been in a conversation where somebody just says, hey, I just bought a university. And I wanna donate some excess stuff, so the donations are coming out of everywhere.
It's been amazing. For what it's worth, been doing this for quite a few years, and I've never seen a response like the city of Herriman. To your credit.
Okay, let's do it
Work on
then.
that language with legal and get the MOU back to you for your final approval, and then hopefully have it on consent agenda on the 24th.
Yeah, we need it on. Can work with staff to start possibly doing paint and stuff?
Yes,
Right
I believe
away.
Monty meet with you all there yesterday.
Yep.
Okay.
So
as
can
long
they
as
get in and
he's-
start doing some painting and
As long
stuff?
as they're coordinating with him and he knows what's going on, that's.
Cause it's all keyed off, so they can get in there, so if
Yeah.
we can get them a key, they can start painting and, okay,
That's great.
love it. That'll make Chandra happy. Yep, you're great.
Thank you, thanks for coming,
Thanks,
so
Sean,
glad you
appreciate
made
it. Drive safe out
Have a
there.
good night. Thank you.
Okay. It's gonna be a huge asset.
That's such a cool thing.
Okay, 2.2, priority for lobbyists with 2024 projected costs, Nathan.
So this is a return of an item you had last time. We included the cost for these projects. Really, the idea is if we're going to use our lobbyists, we should focus on a very specific project and ask for assistance. We have been told that the legislature's they don't see themselves as having a bunch of money this year, which is why they're projects, they're looking at our money to do things. So I don't know how successful we'll be, but I do think my recommendation is we pick 2 or 3 of these and just that's what we have our lobbyists hit on all the time. If it's this funding cycle or if it's the next one. In order, I think both 7300 West, a portion of 7300 West is on the city. We're still trying to figure out exactly what our share is of that. And then 6400 West also falls heavily to the city. 138, we've got about half that, about 4.2 million. That one is one I think because of its combination with Riverton and opening up some connectivity into Bluffdale has an opportunity to get some legs in the legislature.
Yeah.
So those would be the 3. We do have the water projects in there. Some of those are being built and funded through some bonds, or we'll have to address those in the future. So really just looking, if you're comfortable, if there's one of these that jumps out at you, like I think this one should be top priority, that's what we're here to hear.
When I was at a meeting with our Olympia developer today, they would love to help pursue 7300.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's a shared lobbying effort that we can make even, right away. So I'm all about 7300 being on there for sure.
I just sent a message back to her, told her to take your time.
Any other thoughts on this, council?
I think those top 3 are great. I know that the developer will go after that. One thing, I was super impressed with what Cody did with getting money for the shelter. That's awesome. Congrats to him. Through some talk radio and research, the feds have money. Do we have a grant writer or a potential grant writer to go after some of that stuff?
There's a few of us.
Not that we love to go after
Well, I
federal
don't-
money,
It's
but.
not just me, I mean, engineering does write for a lot of grants too, police writes for grants. Justin writes for grants, it's all kind of part of our other
Kind of a
duties as
secondary.
assigned.
Yeah.
And interesting, for these bigger projects like that, they tend not to be just, hey, here's this open competitive grant, go for it. It usually is an issue, you work with your congressperson who gets you money designated,
Okay.
and then you have to go through a whole application process, which Justin's doing, for the money we received for the, Old Town water pipe replacement. We've been awarded that, but they awarded it through a grant process, so we're still doing all that paperwork, so, whether you write the grant or just have to administer it to get it there, it's a fair amount of work, but we
Yeah,
didn't try that. So this, if we're doing this locally, I think we could also hit our, federal, if we can find a federal nexus to it, we can ask.
There's also pass-through money from the feds that goes through the state, and that's a lot of the grants we work in. The granting process is a little less onerous, but
Please have.
most of it is secondary for all of us. And I've worked in places where they had primary writers, and there's good and bad to it, really.
Most of us.
I'll say I started my career as a grant writer, and it was in the dot-com boom, and there was tons of money. And after the dot-com bust, there wasn't that much money.
One of the things you have to be very careful with is people on grants. That's where a lot of police departments across the USA got in trouble. Got a lot of cop grants, and then you have to pay for them at some point when that money runs out.
So if these are our priorities, we'll also look into some of those federal options, see if we can. There's something we could use there. One of the challenges with federal monies and projects like this, where these are greenfields, is you would open yourself up to a NEPA process, which would, in typical fashion, is gonna add a year to 18 months to on the front end of design, before you can even really design, you have to do the environmental. So often, like for police, it works well. For the old town, the pipe replacement, since we've been trying to get a categorical exclusion, I don't know how long that took.
8-9 months.
Yeah, which just means they look at it and say, yeah, you don't need to actually do the study. So federal dollars, they come with their
Cost.
own challenges, I would say. But yeah, we can certainly look at them for
And
certain
cost, cause a lot
things.
of times you have to hire an independent consultant
Yeah.
to do your studies.
Yeah, NEPA is a full consultant employment act. So, okay. Well, if that's it, then we'll focus on those 3 transportation projects and go from there.
Okay, love it. Okay. 2.3, council boards and committee assignments. Nathan?
So we had committed to council to bring these back in January, and I think as we look at the timing, especially of those committees that are not city appointed, we probably need to move this into November, which normally would work just fine, because the election would have taken place. This year was really weird. When I started thinking about it, I realized the election was pushed to the 20th, which was after so I just left this in January, but I think that's what we'll commit to, try and bring these early to you, just so, because those that aren't appointed by us tend to run through December 31, and then they want somebody else appointed. We did receive a letter on the mosquito abatement. I don't know when that was dated, but they are asking.
I just got it today, so yeah.
Reappoint, that term also expired at December 31, but they're looking to have Counselor Shields put back on. So here's the list. It starts with those that are really outside the city. The top 2 are, so the top ones are a bunch of groups outside. The next one is all the Wasatch Front regional, the regional government, and then the bottom ones are the city city created boards. And so the assignments are there. I don't know if you want to make changes, you wanna let it ride as it is, but we just committed we'd bring this back to you.
Any desires to mix things up? Not a fan.
I think we briefly talked about it last meeting, but Steve loves his mosquitoes, so.
I do. It's fun.
Yeah.
The only thing I would note on here is this, the ZAP Tier 2 Advisory Board. I have not pointed to that, I've not been, Paul Pearson
Pearson.
from our, community is serving on that, but
Okay, so that's
That's the county.
does,
that.
does COG appoint that, or is it the
No.
actual county? Okay, so we need
It's
to
the
just change this, cause this shows COG appointing it, but.
No, they have an application process through the county. I'm not sure which board actually reviews and approves it, but.
And then Western Growth Coalition, I mean,
No
I
longer
guess that's,
exists.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they chose to kind of sunset.
that was a strange.
It was the same meeting as the Regional Growth Committee.
We okay with LPC still? We okay with you still good?
Although my blood pressure goes up every single time I'm in that meeting. Yeah, you saw me just firing them up. Nobody responds, but
When they hid them from us in the room, we used to be able to see all those comments popping up, now they hide them. So we can't see.
You did get a shout out.
I did.
You did, because you made something happen.
It was a good change.
Yeah, we'll see how that impacts the results of those answers.
I did finally get appointed as my vice chair. Is that what it is, maybe? COG? Or was it COM?
Yes, COM. So you will be president next year.
Congratulations.
Nice. Sweet.
Mayor.
That's like, it reminds me of.
Okay, so I prefer to keep it as is. I think longevity and helps in these situations.
As long as I don't have to do UFA.
Yeah, seriously, I'll let Jared, I think Jared wants
Jared's
that.
there, yeah.
And he's actually currently on there, he's chair of the
Finance.
compensation, no, he's on the finance, so he's asking a lot of hard questions.
And then the in-house committees, I think, those are good. We're
Yep.
finally getting our,
I think they're all really good.
Yeah.
Education committee's been, okay, yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's tomorrow morning too, so
I like it.
we gotta be done early, Mayor, so I get some sleep.
Okay, I'm trying. Okay, so no changes.
Okay,
All in favor? Everybody had.
and I'll correct that for Zap
Okay.
and Western.
Two point four, general fund grant and sponsorship request proposal.
This is a little bit different spin on how people, organizations can request money. Kyle and I have been talking about it, this helped me out a little bit, thinking through it. We feel like it's best to do it through the budget process instead of having the onesie twosies coming here and there like we've had before, requesting donations or sponsorships. Our vision is to set a dollar amount for the council to have every year to make those decisions, with the budget process that would start in July of the year. My recommendation would be to do those on an annual basis, even though we have a biennial budget. So you'll still have that certain pot of money, but the application process would still be annual for those nonprofits and organizations. This would include things like Friends of Herriman, the Columbus Center if they wanted to request funding for any of their programs or activities, the Utah Warriors, those types of things. The other thing that, I don't know if I put it in the staff report, I can't remember because that was it was last year when I wrote that staff report. We will have access to CDBG funds this year, and with some of those funds, you can also support organizations that are doing activities that qualify for CDBG funding. So you could have, groups from downtown that are technically working in Herriman by supporting either homeless activities, maybe their primary residence is here or was here, their parents are here and they're supporting homeless individuals. It's those types of situations. They don't ask for a lot of money, but they do ask for some support for those folks that they're helping that are technically from Herriman. I thought about, there's grants, which I would consider Friends of Herriman receiving a grant. We're giving them money and saying, go do your programs and services and report back. And then there's this concept of sponsorships where maybe they're using the pavilion to do a nonprofit fundraiser or something like that, and we're waiving the fees, but they're not a group that has an MOU. So that really doesn't apply to the dollar amount, I suppose, with the fee waiver, but that's something to consider too. Or remember we did that concert out here, that may be a sponsorship that we're waiving that fee, right?
Do we capture the value of those dollars in our total fee schedule, or is it, I know we're not charging them, but do we,
We could capture
Report that or,
it
like,
and report
report
it
it?
with the budget. It just wouldn't be like a line item,
More just data.
just, yeah.
So we know what we've done and, yeah.
So we've created this kind of grant application, it's pretty basic.
It's similar to what the CDGB process was before, when I sat on it as a county, it's just people
Very
come
similar.
and
Yeah, ask
there
for
might be
fee.
different buckets that we have to pull, you know, you can have to apply under the different buckets.
do we have a rating or a metric system or something on there?
We'll put together
Okay.
a score sheet.
So it's more subjective than,
Yeah, we'll put together a score sheet. I envision it being a recommendation committee to council. That's kind of how we did it with CDBG in South Jordan.
Yep.
Was they had certain metrics, how many people, how many residents they serve, what programs and activities they're doing, there's all sorts of things.
Put a cap on the requests,
We can,
cap on the minimum, because
we can if that's,
the number
just think
requests or
that-
the
well,
money?
the amount, you don't want somebody coming in and asking for $1 million if you're never going
well,
to do that, right?
Or are we?
Or if they're gonna ask for $10, if
In the
they're gonna do
process,
that, then you
yeah.
might, or, waive this $30 fee, you may want to not be burdened as council or the staff to have to go through that and bring it to
Correct.
council and you wanna do this, right? So, just some thoughts about how to do that.
I like
and
it.
we haven't even talked about a dollar amount. We're going through the budget process right now with all of the departments, and Kyle and Nathan will figure out kind of what that looks like and how much is there.
I think when we have the special meeting in February, we can give you a better update of where the budget's at, and then from there, we can set an amount.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I'd like to understand what kind of fees we might be waiving and what kind of economic impact that might have should we waive those.
Is there,
I guess not even saying we have to, I think that's just, I think they're saying this is an application process where they could apply for that.
is there a process or is there from the past of how many fees we've waived in the past or what we've given out in the past to
Most-
sponsorships?
As long as I've been here, the only people that I can remember waiving fees for was the 2 concerts. It was the Alex Boyer concert, that was Nathan's first year, and then the one that was last year.
Jess,
And we didn't do any permit fee, like event permit fees, there's a $150 permit fee for that. So I think those are the only 2 outside of Arts Council and
In-house
our
groups
in-house
and,
kind of
okay.
stuff. And like Wasatch Front and those types of things, we waive those fees.
And are we also intending this, for like the Warriors, right? They ask for
Yeah.
sponsorships, this would also
Correct.
be the time so that you're getting everything, so you can at least look at it all together instead of getting a one-off in this vacuum.
And I feel it puts council in a bad position when you have somebody coming and asking you for money. It's hard to say no, right? Because you know they're doing such great work and they're doing a great thing in the community, and it's just, it really puts a burden on you all to,
If there's a process, it makes it a lot easier.
yeah.
Well, I would say I think there's a difference between waiving of fees, right, and depending on how much they are would kind of determine the level of significance there. On the other hand, there would be sponsorships where there's, like with the Warriors or the Shield, right, there is a calculated economic benefit to the community and to the city for that amount of investment, right? And so there's it's more of an investment than just a donation, does that make sense?
absolutely.
And then in between those are the people that just ask for a donation for something, and that's where I think the city has to draw a line that we really don't do that part. Does that make sense?
100%. 100% agree too. It's not our money, so like we keep saying,
Right.
it's not the city.
Nathan, do you think we need to do an official policy surrounding this?
I think once we would do that. We're in the process of creating at least an intranet site so city staff can see all the council policies. Eventually, those can be public, but trying to capture all it, just so that there's guidelines to how we're setting this together. So, yeah, we'll probably do that as official.
Anything else on this, any questions or
But I like it.
concerns?
We're gonna try to enact it for this coming year.
Yes, that's my hope. That's part of the budget process this year.
Love it. Okay, good work, I like it. I like it. Okay, 2.5, annexation of city-owned property located in unincorporated Salt Lake County.
John, there is a map located for on the key drive for this, there we go. Okay, so the areas in teal on the map, I think you had in your packet too, are city-owned properties that we've been able to acquire through either Revy or ACUB or Weston Landscape or that one kind of in the middle is our spring. That,
We've owned that for forever.
yeah. We, this past fall, was it last fall? We had an incident up in this area with hunting, I don't know if you wanna speak to it, chief, where there was some confusion as to who was supposed to be the responding authority on that incident. Do you have that?
Yeah, that's right.
Cause it's Herriman City property in the county, so UPD technically has jurisdiction
That's right.
because it's in the county, so do you wanna talk about it at all, or?
No,
Is that
and
it?
that's exactly it.
Okay, that's.
And there was some confusion over at Manor Day a little bit longer with a lot of different departments that if we were to go down this road would not be that, so.
We are, did you?
Well, cause the county allows for hunting on public property, they're like, oh, it's city property that's public. But we also have our own ordinances that govern our own property, but because it's in the county, that's kind
The
of where
city ordinance didn't cover
this
it.
discussion
Can
came
we
from.
annex uncontiguous property like this?
This is contiguous, we own all
The
the
bigger
property in
green part.
Herriman.
Which is where the incident.
The lower stuff, but the other
The other
parcels
two.
that are in
Those parcels we couldn't now.
Okay, I just wanted to make
It's just the
sure.
ones that are connected there.
Just this one on the
other
right
eye.
corner, okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Correct. Jackie is working on our annexation plan, which will
Policy.
come, or I'm sorry, policy. We've already got an annexation plan,
This has to be
Policy.
updated.
which will go to planning commission this month.
Yeah, so it'll go to just a work session that Mike's gonna present next week at planning commission, and then it'll have a public hearing at planning commission, and then we're required to have another public hearing at council level on it.
And so our plan, if you do wanna move forward to annex this property, would be to reach out to the properties that we don't own, that are right in the way. One of them is this tank site, is that right, Justin? That little rectangle.
left.
And then the other bigger rectangle, we're currently looking at some,
That one there?
yes,
This is BLM, right?
yes. If they do not want to annex into the city, those property owners, then we would have to request a peninsula, correct?
Yeah, the
Jackie?
county and the city would have to agree on the creation of a peninsula.
If they do want to annex into the city, we'd also include that property.
Weird.
So. Just wanted to get it in front of you because it's quite the process.
Let's do it.
It's easy.
Look at us go.
And then is that Camp Blue still on this border here?
Okay, why do you gotta jinx us?
I'm not.
This is why I didn't,
Listen.
do you wanna say anything? I do not.
Okay,
I only know-
2.6, discuss, I'm sorry if I'm quiet, I ain't pushing you back on here, I'm sorry if that
Chug.
slows me.
Just tell them 6 minutes.
Okay, discuss. I just cut people off, I feel bad, so. 2.6, discuss fiscal year 2025 and 2026 budget revenue projections. Kyle.
Oh, here we go.
That was 4 minutes in, that's great.
There goes our,
Over under.
there goes the over.
Be nice to Kyle.
Kind of our goal is to be giving you information throughout as we go, so this is really just revenues tonight. So you're not getting it all in May, like here's one big thing, and so.
Yeah, so we have a little slide coming up on that. And I did include these in the packet, so you've at least seen them. I've done some updates based off some new information we've got, but nothing major. First, I just want to quickly go over the budget calendar of the budget process. So it actually started in November and December. The departments were putting together their budget requests, and their budgets for each of their departments, so I made them do that during the holidays. I was also working on revenue estimates and then creating what's called a base budget, and that is, if we were to keep everything status quo, take out one-time items, what would the budget look like to use as a starting point? So in January, the department's budgets were due to me by the 3rd. We, as senior staff, have been having meetings with the departments about their budgets, and those just wrapped up today. Next council meeting, I'll be discussing some of the more set budgets, such as the RDA and debt service budgets. We have that special city council meeting in February to go in depth into some budget topics on there, and then we will start department and then overall budget discussions, which will go through April. And hopefully by the end of April, you know what's coming in the budget. Everything might not be decided on, but when you get the tentative budget, you're not gonna have a huge amount of surprises. Everything might not be decided on, but you'll at least know what's in the budget. So that will be May 8th is when you'll adopt the tentative budget, and then June, provided no tax increases being proposed, you would adopt the final budget on June 12th. If a tax increase is being proposed, that goes through August and goes through the truth and taxation process. So with that, I usually like to start with the high level and then go into the detail. So this is just an overall revenue summary since fiscal year 2020. And as a reminder, in fiscal year 24, we moved to development-related revenues such as building permits, planning, zoning fees. Those got moved into a separate fund, and that was mostly due to a state mandate that development-related revenue can only be used for development-related expenses. So that explains the drop between fiscal year 23 and 24. As you can see, the blue shaded portion is taxes, so that is the majority of where our budget comes from. I did a little comparison on fiscal year 2020. You'll notice there's a 50% there and then an 80% on fiscal year 2026. So I compared how much of the general fund budget was being funded by taxes. So it's went from 50% to 80%, and that's due to the development-related revenue being moved out. As you can see, back in 2020, that made up 30% of our general fund budget. Down at the bottom, I did make some notes just overall. So 24, we did have budgeted revenue of about 21.9 million. As you know, you passed a budget amendment with a $1.1 million sales tax decrease. There were very aggressive sales tax projections, and then as you know, the sales tax growth has slowed. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then fiscal year 25 is projecting a 1.8% increase, so that's about 390,000 of new money. And then we're hoping for a little bit more of an economic recovery in 26, so that would increase revenues by 2.4% or 544,000 of quote-unquote new money. Going to taxes a little bit more, this chart shows our different taxes by type. As you can see, sales tax is by far the largest amount of tax revenue we receive. That 65% on the left represents how much of our taxes were made up of sales tax. And then in 26, I have a typo there, it's up to 69%. That's due to I've got a chart on this, we've had some exceptional sales tax growth, and it's not just Herriman, it's been statewide, especially during the pandemic when people shifted their purchasing patterns. As you can see, our average yearly increase has been 15%, and that is fueled almost exclusively by sales tax. With the slowdown in sales tax, the increase is only anticipated to be 2% in 25 and 3% in 26. So definite slowdown. We're not expecting negative right now, however, we do watch it pretty closely. And
Trying to get it back 1 second.
oh, I think I did the turn on, turn off thing with the clicker and it worked. So property tax, as you all well know, but maybe for the public that's watching, they might not be aware. The way property tax works in the state is we receive the same amount of revenue we received the prior year plus any new growth that occurs. So there's no inflationary increases that are built in. Those, if a city or a council wants to receive that revenue, they'd have to go through a process called truth and taxation. As you can see by the table on the right, our growth has been high, but it has started slowing since 2021. Which we can also see by building permit revenue, especially in the past year. Another fact that most people don't realize is it does take us about 2 years to see the full growth of a new home or new commercial business come online. Due to the slowdown we've seen in building permits, I'm recommending at this time a 3% property tax increase for each of those 2 years. We don't know the final numbers from the assessor's office until June, so it really is a guess until those numbers come out. And I've done a similar chart in the past. This chart shows
I just wanna make sure I understood that correctly. That 3%, is that based on growth, it would be 3%?
Correct,
Not
that-
a 3% tax
no,
increase?
no, this is just the
Sorry.
growth.
These are just the
That's what I
growth.
just wanted to make
So
sure.
those growth is.
I was like, wait a second, did I hear that right? Okay.
No, that would be a discussion towards the end of the budget process in terms of council direction and what council would like to fund, so, but that is strictly just growth to 3%.
Okay.
This chart, the green shows our base tax amount we get every year. That yellow, it's more of a brown band, is new growth, so that's the additional revenue we receive. And then that dark blue is the amount of inflation that's been lost because it's not captured in sales tax. So that's about $181,000 for the general fund, and just as a reminder, we only receive about $1 million of property tax in the general fund, so it's a very small amount. This chart is a tax rate comparison of neighboring cities in Salt Lake County. Up in the upper right, I have put the different fire service area rates and then the law enforcement service area rates, because I know this has come up in the past. So you can see, especially with police, the Herriman City Safety Enforcement Area has a significantly lower tax rate than Slavisa does, or the UPD taxing entity. And then as you can see, our fire service area rate is also lower than what the Unified Fire Service area rate is. I hate showing charts like this because each city does their finances a different way and they have a different levels of service. Some cities, for example, charge if they have an energy, like an electric utility, they will charge a franchise fee. They will do transfers in. Broadband's the same way. I've seen some cities do that where they'll charge a fee and transfer in money. And then there's also a whole service level discussion because each of these cities has a different level of service.
The thing about this too is it doesn't say what portion of those budgets are covered through this tax, right?
Right,
That's really
exactly.
important because even though our tax rate looks higher, it covers 100% of that budget. And we're not using funds from other sources of the budget to fund those.
Right.
Whereas these other cities could be using general fund revenues or, your point, franchise fees or extra stuff like that, so.
This is a chart showing how, for an average property owner, how the taxes are distributed. So as you can see, almost half of it does go to the Jordan School District. The dark green is the Herriman City portion, so that includes the service areas, police and fire, and then also our general property tax. There's small slivers for some other entities, and Jordan Valley Water is also on there, so. I just like to show this because people look at their property tax notice, they think Herriman City is getting the entire amount when in actuality, close to half of it's going to the school district.
Can we break up the Herriman City portion for the next, if you bring the slide back?
Yeah.
That'd be
The property tax versus the.
police and fire off of it.
Yeah.
Cause I think that's very interesting that our property tax for the whole city, it probably is
It's a very small
$85 where the library is $185, so just put that in perspective.
Here is a chart showing sales tax, so As you know, we receive, we'll back up a little bit. So sales tax is split half based off of what's received at point of sale. So that's from Herriman businesses that collect sales tax, and the other half is received out of the statewide pool. Because we've historically had a smaller tax base, we've received more from that statewide pool. But as you can see, comparing 2019 to 2023, in 2019, we were receiving 79% of our sales tax from that statewide pool, and that has decreased to 74%. So as we add more businesses and commercial areas in the city, that reliance on that statewide pool will shrink.
That's encouraging.
I also do like to point out, because internet sales.
Hey,
There's Siri.
Hi, Sherry.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I was just like, hey, can they hear me yet?
Now we can.
I was just curious on that, on the sales tax. If I know that with all the online purchases and things like that, are we getting credit then if our residents are purchasing at their home and having things delivered to their home? How well is that accounted for?
Yes, so as I said, any business that is collecting greater than 100,000 of revenue has to report sales tax. And it is supposed to be based off of delivery location. So it would be up to the tax commission to audit. But it is mostly automated electronic now, so as far as I know, it's occurring. But I haven't heard anything specifically from the tax commission on their audit procedures on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Then looking at sales tax growth, so as I had mentioned, we had seen extraordinary sales tax increases. So between 2019 and 2023, it had grown an average of 24% a year. The majority of that occurring during the pandemic years when people switched from experiences to goods. Among other inflation, there's a lot of things that contributed to that. I do have also a few more statistics. So our point of sale average growth, so that's the businesses within Herriman grew 28%. So that's both increased sales and then also new businesses occurring in the city. And then the statewide pool grew 20% during that same time. The table on the right shows our sales tax collection since July. And the city manager has talked about this a little bit on previous occasions, is that it's been a bit of a roller coaster for us with our sales tax distribution. So 1 month it's up 3%, in August it dropped 7%. We were wondering if the floor was going to fall out. It bumped back up in September, and October came in at 1%. One of the negative things for us when we're trying to analyze this is we only have access to our point of sale data. So we know what Herriman City businesses do, but we don't really get detail on the statewide total. So we don't know, if our statewide pool dropped 5%, we really don't know why. We can call up the tax commission, they might give us some generalities, but most of the time they claim taxpayer confidentiality and unless there's something major that happened. So with that at the bottom, I did put, we are anticipating a budget of about 12.4 million in 24 and then 12.7 in 25. So that's a 2 and a 3% growth rate. Quickly, we're almost at the end. Just some other general revenue trends. And these are a low percentage of our overall total revenue. Cemetery lot sales, so we did not put in a budget for cemetery lot sales in the current fiscal year because we knew the cemetery was almost full. So this would be putting a budget back in, and that is assuming we're selling lots in the new portion of the cemetery. Events revenue, so finance is still working with events on this, and then we will have to have more discussions with you as a council on what events we will be doing, and then what level of subsidy the council is comfortable with on those events, if any. So I've put it's dependent and it's subject to change. The ice ribbon, as you probably remember, is you did approve a fee increase, so that does increase the revenue for the ribbon. Our road funding, so this comes from the gas tax that's charged on fuel purchases, so we're expecting about a 3% increase. Our court fines, which is a small portion of our budget at $250,000. Court fines has been really difficult to budget because the court shut down during the pandemic. And when it came back up, there was an amount of catching up on cases, so we didn't necessarily know what a baseline was going to be. So we do know that baseline now, and we're requesting a decrease in revenue for that. Interest income, as you know, rates have been quite high, which has hampered growth in a lot of different areas. It's been great for us for our idle cash. We've earned more interest income. However, as we've drawn down fund balance, and then also I'm anticipating we will see some rate cuts we'll be requesting a pretty substantial increase in our interest income, so we're not relying on that when rates drop even further. And then passports, we have been seeing a softening in passports. Our city recorder has been looking at different ways of combating that and doing more advertising when it seems like we're not getting a lot of reservations. However, I think the pandemic related, I think it was called revenge travel, when people couldn't travel and then all of a sudden there was that surge of travel. I think that's starting to ease off, so passport requests are starting to come in lower than that.
I need more revenge travel.
With that, I did also do the same chart for the safety enforcement area, so our police property tax. As you're aware, you did approve, the safety enforcement area board approved a property tax increase, so it does decrease that inflationary part because it's in theory caught up with that increase, but it's also projected to have the same 3% increase that the general property tax has. And then a fire service area, of note, the board did approve CDA participation agreements. So next year there will be a reduction in revenue due to those participation agreements kicking in, and then the normal tax increase would start again in '26. Water and stormwater funds, there's not a lot to say on this. The water fund, we are in the process of the rate study. The Public Works Director and myself are getting information to the consultant to continue that in the next month. And then in the stormwater fund, we are expecting modest growth. We will discuss that more as we discuss their budget requests. On stormwater, we're anticipating a 4% increase in '25 and then a 3%. A lot of that 4% is due to growth being higher than we were initially anticipating, so some of that is a catch-up from prior years. And with that, are there any questions? I've thrown a lot of numbers and graphs at you.
I think you're doing a great job. I appreciate your conservative approach on interest and things like that, because those are sometimes just overlooked, and I think they do have impacts on our budgetary numbers. I also appreciate the fact that you're updating those more than biannually, so that we're keeping that more up to date, and I appreciate your attention to those details. It's good.
I have one more question. Can you hear me again?
Yep. Yes.
I was just kind of thought that the water rate study would be back by now. Can you give me a better time frame of when we might anticipate that will be completed?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at bringing something back to you in February, and then to look at in a work meeting, and then a public hearing sometime in March.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's well done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kyle, for all your work. It is nice to have this start trickling in, like you said. That sets us, I think that gives us a baseline of what to.
Then a 4-hour project, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's in a brain fog about 30 minutes in.
Yep.
6 minutes.
Okay. 2.7. Want to do 2.7? Should we jump into this? Yeah, let's just do 2.7, water treatment and supply discussion.
All right, so I sent a lot of information in the packet. didn't expect you to read the 170-page treatment study wholly, but there's some good information in there. I tried to consolidate it in the staff report. But kind of what we're looking for tonight is just some direction on any of the alternatives you want us to continue looking forward on, or if there's a combination of them, do you want us to look at several different options? And then, so we'll just kind of move through. So some of the options are treatment. We can treat our existing water sources, or we can purchase more water from Jordan Valley, or we can do something as far as maybe providing some type of treatment for people to install in their homes. The most effective for meeting some of the water quality goals that we had in the treatment study would be RO. Now, there's other options as far as, conventional water softeners and those types of things, but so starting off with treatment, we had 6 or 7 different treatment alternatives we were looking at in that treatment study. 4 of those met the water quality goals that we had set in the treatment study, and that's reverse osmosis, electrodialysis reversal, a combined membrane, which is RO, and electrodialysis reversal, and then what's called the zero liquid discharge. And that's mainly to handle the residuals, stream flows that come out of that, and lime softening. So those were the 4 that kind of made the goal. And then we put those through a criterion to see which one would be the most effective in treating our water, and that ended up being reverse osmosis. And then on the water purchases, our current operation, as we've discussed, is blending to try and bring those water TDS levels down. And I won't go into a lot of that detail because it's in the staff report, but during the winter, that blending falls off to about 45%, which means Jordan Valley levels are fairly low in TDS. Our levels of our water quality are fairly high, so we try and blend that to bring it down below 1,000 milligrams per liter. Summer, just because of our high peak demand, our sources can't keep up, therefore we buy more Jordan Valley, which increases that blending, which we don't see a lot of those complaints or concerns from residents in the summertime just because that blending is so much higher. And there are a fair number of residents that, because of our connection to Jordan Valley, get direct Jordan Valley water. They don't see any of our water sources in the summer. Therefore, in the fall and winter, we have a increase in those calls for complaints. So we have those seasonal fluctuations. So moving forward, so I will say I have a fairly quick, I have just a handful of slides that'll cover costs and we can talk into those, but I do also have some slides that'll cover some of those treatment options if we want to go into a little more detail. But here's just some general treatment costs for 5 of the treatment alternatives. Reverse osmosis being the preferred treatment option again. So you can see there's a wide range of total capital costs. So the water treatment plant costs are there in that left cost column, and that is to construct a treatment plant. And with each alternative you have residuals that you have to deal with because we're taking those calcium, magnesium, and those other constituents that are in the water out. So we have to deal with those. And so those are the residual handling costs. And then flow capital, and then we have some estimated annual O&M costs. And then I also put on here the in-home. So I just picked 100 units to kind of give just an order of magnitude. So the whole home, that is where you install an RO system at the point of entry to the home, and it'll treat all of the water used in the home. Those are a little bit more costly. In a lot of cases, a lot of people don't do that because of the cost, but then also a lot of times they just want to treat the drinking water or the water they cook with, which is the single tap, and you just install that at your kitchen faucet or wherever you'd commonly use water for drinking and cooking. Another option is if we want to just say, okay, well, if we want to do some type of a subsidy to the residents, we could just pick $1,000. There's many options we have here as far as if we want to go that route, but that is a potential option. increased Jordan Valley purchases. So on the left, you see what our water use was for 2023. Our sources produced just over 4,000 acre feet. We purchased nearly 6,000 acre feet from Jordan Valley, and you can see those costs there. Our costs are a lot cheaper than purchasing water from Jordan Valley. Our costs are, an average cost of our sources is around $170 an acre foot. Jordan Valley is somewhere around $700 an acre foot. So I put a couple scenarios here. So like I mentioned earlier, in the winter, fall, spring, we see those complaints go up. And so we do have an option to potentially just shut off our sources and just use Jordan Valley. And that means throughout the annual year, we would produce 2,700 acre feet rather than 4,200 acre feet. And then we'd have an increase in Jordan Valley purchases there. I will say with that, there's a caveat. We do have a couple of sources that are quite a ways away from any Jordan Valley sources. Those TDS levels are usually down around 700 out of those sources, so they're much lower. To try and offset those and not utilize those in the winter would be a little more difficult because it'd be difficult to get water from Jordan Valley up there. But like I said, the TDS levels are much lower there than we're seeing elsewhere in the city. And then the year-round scenario, you can see the cost there, the total purchase from Jordan Valley.
So we should say that presupposes we can actually buy the water
Yes.
from Jordan Valley, and that is not a given.
Yeah, I have had preliminary discussions with them about this. Obviously, they said, we'd have to go and have some discussion to see if we could maybe, just flip the switch now and just say, we want to make that change. They would have to look at it and say, okay, can we provide that? Now, they did say that the winter scenario, they felt like they could because we're taking that water off peak. And so they feel like they could supply that, but in peak is where, trying to come up with that extra 4,000 acre feet might be difficult for them. It might entail, increasing pipe sizes or infrastructure projects. So those are analysis we'd still have to do. So Kyle helped me come up with some potential bonding costs for those treatment alternatives, and this is just the reverse osmosis because that was the preferred method out of the study. And you can see we put together a 20 and 30 year debt service payment and then add the annual costs for O&M. As you can see there, the annual cost would be 7.6 and 6.7 million on which one of those debt service payment plans you wanted to go on, and you can see the estimated impacts to the rates. So the water rates would go somewhere around 60% increase. Now, this would be above and beyond any of the other rate increases we're talking about with the rate study. And then looking at the Jordan Valley, you can see each one of those scenarios there. That obviously has less of an impact on our rates, but as Nathan mentioned, we'd have to work out with Jordan Valley to see if they could provide that year-round scenario at this time. Now, we could work to achieve that over time with potentially some infrastructure improvements and those things, and making sure they could supply. And then the in-home treatment, if it's an option, you can see those costs and potential increases there.
So it'd be 1 or 2% per 100 units.
Yes, exactly.
Divided.
Yeah, so that's correct. So if we wanted, the council could set, we could do a pilot program for a year or two and see how much interest there is. And then we could adjust that based on the interest or how much the council would like to budget for those types of things. Obviously, there would be a lot of staff time in managing and maintaining that process and an application process, working with a contractor. If we wanted to go out to RFP and get a contractor that the city could utilize to say, okay, we had these people come in and request it and install it in their homes, I'd assume it'd be a first come, first served basis, something like that.
Did you have the time to look to see if there were grants available for that type of program?
No, I have not.
Well, and I mean, not to cut in here, my concern about that, right out of the gate, the 100 is, I'm not comfortable charging every resident to then benefit 100 homes.
Yep. Agreed.
That's, and I'm not, that's,
Agreed.
I think that's,
Well, I also think it's part of our base services to provide clean, available water to every resident.
But it is clean water. Just because PDS levels are high doesn't mean it's not clean water. The complaints aren't because it's not safe. The complaints are because it's hard and they don't like the deposit left over, but we're within the realm of being safe.
Yeah, and so, Councilman Member Orrin is correct. Obviously, we're regulated by the state, Division of Drinking Water, so we're meeting the drinking water standards, but aesthetically, you've all, I'm sure, received the complaints. It is hard water. Not only does it impact your, in-home appliances and those types of things aesthetically, sometimes people don't like the taste of it and those types of things, so.
Those people are crazy. I love it.
So those are the concerns.
I'm like chewing my water.
Yeah.
Hey Justin, did you look into, I know there was some comments made about perhaps if we did some sort of a water treatment plant that we could share it with maybe Riverton, that we could share some of these costs. Can the discharge on RO be piped to the Great Salt Lake to fulfill some of those needs? Do you know any information on any of that?
Yeah, I have a slide here that will touch on that here in just a few minutes.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so here's some extra slides, and we don't have to go through this, this was in the packet. But essentially RO is just a treatment process that uses membranes to pull the, I'll just say contaminants out of the water. There are water losses when that happens because you have a waste stream. And in RO, it's approximately 18% loss with the type of treatment we're looking at. So your total capacity would decrease. And that is similar with the EDR. You have a loss that's a little bit less. This is a similar filtration process, but it uses electricity to pull certain ions out of the water. The combined membrane is essentially taking RO, EDR, combining those treatments to reduce the amount of water loss, and then instead of trying to figure out a way to get rid of the waste stream, you build what's called a zero liquid discharge system, which essentially evaporates the water and leaves a solid that then needs to be disposed of. And it's essentially made up of salts. So you can see the water loss is much less, but the capital costs and operational costs are much higher. Lime softening, it's basically you introduce lime and soda ash. It basically takes all of those contaminants, clumps them up, settles them out to the bottom, and then you can take and use that water. Water loss is low, but then you have a solid, it's a sludge that now you have to deal with and haul off. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that possible to repurpose that in any way?
So with the lime softening, you could repurpose it similar to the sewer district and how they're selling it to agricultural and those types of things. The byproduct of lime softening could be used in agricultural purposes to help with pH, but it's similar, there's not a lot of agricultural uses in our area, so it'd have to be hauled a long ways, and we could do something similar to what, South Valley Sewer District is doing, but, it's a large process, as you know, with South Valley Sewer District. And ion exchange is similar, it has a waste stream, it's much smaller. Typically so this is essentially, a water softener on steroids. It's similar to that, but the waste stream typically that goes to the sewer, but because of our high discharge rate, that may not be a possibility, so we may have to have a discharge pipe. And then in-home treatment, just a little bit more information there. So this is touching on what Councilmember Orrin mentioned, there's beginning to be more traction towards doing some type of a treatment throughout the county, and I'll say Jordan Valley member agency service area, in building a regional pipeline to collect the byproduct from several different treatment plants throughout Salt Lake Valley and convey that to the Great Salt Lake. So the biggest issue with the treatment plant, particularly where we are, is we can't discharge to the Jordan River because of our increased TDS levels and it would decrease the water quality of the Jordan River. Sewer district won't take it because they end up having to treat it and then put it in the Jordan River. So really the only option is to send it to the Great Salt Lake. Now, this has been done a couple of times in Salt Lake Valley, so we know it can happen. It's just there's a large permitting process. Plus, building a pipeline from Herriman to the Great Salt Lake is quite expensive. So putting together and trying to build a regional pipeline would be cost effective. So it'd be the agencies within the Salt Lake Valley. There'd be a regional pipeline like we talked about where the treatment plants could all put their waste product into the line. And then there would be a shared cost between all the members. This has not had a lot of discussions. We're actually meeting later this week. The first meeting we'll have with all of the agencies to see, what interest there is. But obviously this would make something like that more feasible. There is some interest from the Great Salt Lake Commission, trying to get more water into the Great Salt Lake. So there may be opportunities for funding and those types of things. So, we'll bring more information back to you as we get that on the potential of this project, but, it's still early on in that.
It just seems crazy. For half the cost of this project, you could just buy every single house in Herriman their own water softener. For half the cost.
Yeah.
There's no justifiable reason to ever consider spending $70 million for that. That's just
45 million budget, so.
Yeah, 32 million would buy softener for every house in Herriman. So that just seems insane to me. As far as the purchase of water from Jordan to change the ratio, right, to bring the TDS down. You put in the percentages of, was it 7% for the winter and 19% for year round? In terms of percentages, those aren't exactly desirable percentages, but how does that impact the basic water bill? In terms of actual dollars on an average water bill in the city?
Our overall average annual water bill for someone is around $65 a month.
Yeah.
And so,
$75
you'd add,
for the winter.
$5 or $6 to the average water bill.
For the winter and maybe $12 for the year round.
75 to 85, roughly.
It's a long time to come to $2,500 at $12 a month.
Yeah.
Are you talking about adding some Jordan Valley water?
Yeah.
So, I'll just talk to you about that. So, in our executive committee meeting on Monday, Jordan Valley is going through the process, they'll come back in February and probably be finalized in March, their water budget. And the reality is if you look at our graph at Jordan Valley, you can see here's anticipated usage and new sources that have to come on to keep up with the growth and the uses, right? The chart's pretty old, and it was based on a little bit of climate factors are in there. Maybe not as drastic as maybe should be in there. And based on what would have been a typical growth pattern in our state. And we're exploding beyond that, primarily because we have a legislator that's demanding it. But they're doing it in a siloed, tunneled vision and not considering water. We are getting tons of money thrown at water conservation, which is way appreciated. But conservation is only going to get us so far. Turning off the water on your grass and shrinking your lawns is only going to get us so far. Just the point alone, the density that they want to put at the point alone, is just blown the whole charts out of the water for Jordan Valley, right? And then, and so Mary Ramsey was great, and she had just came from the Point meeting, and she said, "Wow, if people at the Point heard this discussion, heads would explode. This is not okay to be saying you're going to start saying we're gonna start saying we have a budget on our water. But the reality is Mother Nature is gonna trump everything. She does not care how many houses you wanna put on an acre. She does not care if the legislator says you could, everywhere in the state, you can put 8 houses on an acre. She does not care. She might send weather like we had last year, and then we might not get anything, right? So there is a reality that has been ignored by this state forever about that we are coming to a brick wall with our water. And we just keep passing legislation that ignores it. And we say, oh, we'll throw a bunch of money at replacing your lawn. It's not gonna fix the problem. We have to start addressing it. So when we look at this, and I led the conversation with this, 8 years ago, I came to a meeting here because I passed a petition around my neighborhood because I didn't feel like we should be approving new subdivisions without it being incorporated into our general plan. I didn't see it on the water plan. I didn't see it on the transportation plan. I felt like there should have been a moratorium saying, let's make sure we develop this area correctly, make sure it's in our plan, make sure we know where it's going. The conversation about water, the administration at the time, when I asked someone, said, where are you gonna get the water? And the answer was, we will just buy more. Let me just tell you how that blows my mind. If there is no more water, there's only a finite amount of water. We've discussed this when we were talking about secondary, right? There's a finite amount of water. And so we can make a plan all we want and say we're gonna go completely Jordan Valley. That's what South Jordan does. That's why they don't have complaints in the winter or there's that, because all they can do is rely on Jordan Valley. We're fortunate at least we have some supply. Now, if Jordan Valley kicks up their groundwater and starts sucking out of the aquifer, I don't know which aquifers are connected and which ones aren't. Most people don't because you don't have anything underneath the ground to figure it out, right? So it's a pretty good scientific guess. So if we start draining all that, then pretty soon, it doesn't matter how many water shares you have. If you don't have water, your shares just shrink and shrink and shrink, right? So we can put those up there all we want and say, let's just convert to Jordan Valley water and try and go buy more water from them, which they may or may not sell to us because they're going through a process to try and figure out where their wall is and making sure they don't overextend themselves because that's super irresponsible of them. But for decades, special service districts, water districts, have had a mandate from the state that says, hey, we're gonna tell you what we're gonna build and you're gonna provide water, find it, right? And so they don't dare say no because they're afraid that the state will just take over. And so that has to change, that whole culture has to change, but it has to change with us too, right? We have to start saying, I got the email from the public comment from the lady today, the resident today, 100% respect what she's saying, 100% understand it. But the fact of the matter is you'd be really happy for high TDS water versus none, right? So I just think that we have to just balance that and try our best to produce the water that we can because it does allow us to be a little bit of self-sufficient here in our city. If Jordan Valley gets over-allocated, which who knows, then at least we're producing some. And maybe we can't water anyone's lawns, but you might have high TDS, it's still gonna be safe to drink, but you can flush your toilet and have a drink, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's been my rant for 3 days. It's unrealistic. And I agree with you on the price, the money here. And I hate saying, I think that there's money available. The Great Salt Lake is just trumping everyone right now. There's lawsuits going on, there's all kinds of stuff, right? And so if we could come up with something that sends water to the Great Salt Lake and helps ease that a little bit, because you lose what, 18% on RO, which is a pretty good chunk of water. And so if you can divert that into a positive place and put it in the Great Salt Lake, and you can get money, don't get me wrong, all money is the same pants, it's all of us can have to pay for it, but if at least it doesn't come out of this particular pocket that's got holes in the bottom or is just empty, then maybe we could find it in other places and get money towards helping create something like that that would allow our own wells to be better, more efficient, provide better water for our residents, and also maybe solve some issues with the Great Salt Lake. Okay, sorry. I didn't even have a Dr. Pepper or anything, but I had a really crazy drive for like 2 hours. Sorry, that's, what do you think?
No, I agree with what you said. I think that the residents have a valid concern. I mean, the water quality is important, right? Because when people feel like they have a complaint, they feel like it's not safe because it might taste funny or there might be a smell to it or those types of things. So I think that's something we have to be sensitive to and try and address if we can.
Well, and I don't think, I hear the appliance issue.
Yeah, it's more,
Yeah.
I think it is.
the $2,000
It's
It's
dishwasher.
expensive, right?
I'm on my 4th dishwasher.
That water
But you
heaters.
can put in your own RO system, if you're that concerned in it, go buy an RO system for your whole home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's possible you can do it yourself.
It is, and one of the concerns I had with buying in-home RO systems, and I reached out to South Valley Sewer and haven't heard back from them yet, which I'll get an answer, is if we start installing a bunch of RO systems, we're gonna be putting a lot higher
Yeah.
TDS, and the water quality for them is gonna change, and so how will that impact them potentially? So that's something that we'd have to also consider. And I'll reach out to them again and see if I can find an answer, but, that's something else to think about.
How does that work with the salt levels currently with this, water softeners?
So that's a huge concern for them now, water softeners. So we install more water softeners. That's also a huge concern for them. They've done several times of trying to figure out ways to reduce the number of water softeners throughout the system, so.
Yeah, everything has
Yeah,
such a
but-
downstream effect.
Yeah, but there's no, I mean, when you have water that's,
45 scale.
just insane hard water, people are gonna soften that, right? I mean, even if it's not an appliance issue, just
Skin.
yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? So, you're either gonna have it, at a municipal level, or you're gonna have all the individual levels, but that salt's gonna be in the system, so one way or the other, right?
So, I mean,
Just a byproduct of the hard water.
one thought is, I mean, if their water costs go up, but we're providing better water, would their overall costs go down?
Yeah.
That's
So,
where I'm at.
Replacing appliances less, those types of things.
Yeah, and that's the feedback I've been getting, is that most people are willing to pay $10 a month more to have softer water and less expense in salt and maintenance and all that other stuff. I mean, I think that's a given that most people would be willing to, well, that's a way overstatement. Most of the feedback I've gotten suggests that a majority of residents would support that kind of deal. But there's people who've already invested thousands of dollars in RO systems and are like, well, now,
It doesn't matter.
I don't need it, it's some cost, I guess, right? But
no, it'll still be effective, an RO system will still be effective, you just won't have to, they take everything out. Pretty much.
Because all of these, we're talking still blending, so it's not going to come through as RO water. I mean,
Unless we do a full RO system,
Yeah, we're talking about blending, or
Even
treating
though-
a certain amount of water, blending it
Correct.
back with the water, just from a cost.
getting hardness from 50 to 15 or something, right? Yeah.
But how, so I've been in many homes where they just run through salt and you sit there and actually program their softener, then it's like, oh, I don't have to fill it up every week.
Yeah.
So there's lots of that, but even if we do change the system, getting that information out to the masses and having to go reprogram and change, and it's still gonna be a process. So I'm not, it's,
And again, it's back to the, $10 more, but at what cost to our water supply? Can we even obtain them? And I understand exactly what you're saying, I'm sure Jordan Valley, they wanna treat their member agencies and take care of the growth that we have now, but it's becoming a big reality about
the
water
$10
budget.
is only for the switching over to Jordan Valley water and buying more.
Right, but
If we're 66% more if we do an RO system.
Oh, yeah, way more
Yeah.
expensive to do that, right?
Anybody's at 40.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's down for that, and I couldn't necessarily.
Well, actually,
support
I'm
that.
down for the RO system, if we can figure out a treatment plant and we can pipe that to the Great Salt Lake and we can get funding and we can get partner communities and we can all benefit from them, I'm 100% down
And I guess
for that.
that's where I'm at. I'm gonna put some out there because we're up at time too, so I'm gonna put out my thought. I would like to pursue, as we're coming to the rate study, I would like to look at that, have that discussion with Jordan Valley, as far as going to the winter only.
For the first stop,
For a
yeah,
first
probably,
step, and
yeah.
then let's start looking towards, I mean, let's just see what else is out there as far as this, that pipeline.
Cause we're talking about another 40,000+ residents at some point in time.
I mean, let's see what funding might be out, I mean,
That's just here.
Yeah, that's just what we look at.
so let's just, is that okay, Justin, okay, is that kind of doing some?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, could it be, even be something maybe we need to loop in, we've never reached out to Burgess for stuff,
That's $500,000.
we've gotta ask, it doesn't hurt to ask for those things, so I think I think we need to make this a priority as a council though, as far as looking at options.
Yeah.
Start talking about it more, making it a point out here that, so again, to Sherry's point, I would like to, maybe this is a short-term gap to where we can pull away from that as we come up with some other solutions online, cause I think water is absolutely gonna be an issue. So the more we can, I think the more we can treat our system to the point down the road, at the.
Put the infrastructure in and get it,
Based on the growth,
Okay.
at some point, you will have to.
We'll have to,
treat water.
yes.
Even the secondary water, Utah Lake, it's going to have to become
Yep.
drinking water. So-
Yep.
Yep.
So there, chances that there's a regional solution, I think is
That's
pretty
what
good,
it
it's
is.
just the timing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't wanna go all the way, I think we can go part way, let's look at the winter only solution, cause that's when we hear that, like you said.
But there's no better time than the present to start time, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to start planning.
And we can't fix it, like you said, we're not gonna be able to come up with a regional solution
Well-
tomorrow or this next winter, so I'd like to.
We find that all the time that if we started now and made a regional plan, everybody was reasonable, we could do it for a lot less money. Instead, we're gonna wait and procrastinate and do it at the last minute when there's no other choice and it's gonna
Yeah.
cost 6 times as much.
So we should not do that, and
Right.
this is it.
we're still talking about water, or are we talking about something else?
I think it's pretty much everything we got right now.
So I guess is everybody okay with that direction? I was just putting out an idea, I'm not saying.
Yeah, I think if we could get funding and it's a multi-jurisdictional solution, I think there's a discussion to have there. If not, I think we look at changing the mix in the winter to help alleviate those complaints and the water hardness. And then, see what happens,
Yeah, I don't think I think that you don't get any funding unless we make it a regional, it has to
Right.
be a regional benefit, cause then you get more buy-in for funding.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Clear as mud? I was worried that our direction is not clear, it's clear, we're good. Okay.
Went there real fast.
I continue
2-8's a pretty
looking at the
simple
RO regional plan.
item.
That's me, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do it real fast, so we don't have to come back for work.
So,
We do have to close though?
yes, we do have closed. Yeah, in your one of your October council meetings, I think it was October 11th, we were talking about Herriman Main Street changing the name, and council gave direction at that time to wait until the project was complete. We'd like to come back to you to ask for us to start the process now. So Salt Lake County, the trailhead can be addressed off the right coordinate now, so people are used to going there. So we're just asking if we can just start it now instead of waiting until April or May.
My big head nod, yep.
Yeah, of course, but it needs to have the U1 That's just craziness.
We'll put that on the street sign.
Formally.
Okay.
Okay, we did it. Wow, we did it. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn our work meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.